Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. Many MPs have been getting an earful from constituents this weekend. Many seniors and those on social assistance upset they will not qualify for the government's latest inflation relief effort. In particular, the $250 checks the government is promising most Canadians to be received in the early spring. Now, it is the second piece to a two-part promise, the other being a so-called GST Holiday, which would apply on many goods and be available to everyone if passed by mid-December. The NDP leader spoke about the $250 checks earlier today. Here's what we heard from Jagmeet Singh.
The Liberals caved to our demand. Well, we learned on Friday that the checks are being excluded from some of the most vulnerable Canadians, from seniors, from people living with disabilities, and from students. It is a slap in the face. We could pass the GST Holiday this week, give people a break right away, and the Liberals have to fix their mess. They have to fix the checks.
Well, joining us now is the Deputy Government House Leader, Mark Gerretsen, Conservative House Leader, Andrew Scheer, and NDP House Leader, Peter Julian. Hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Listen, Mr. Julian, I'm going to get you to start because we just heard your leader from earlier this afternoon expressing anger that seniors, those who have not worked in the past year, will not receive the $250 check in the spring. But, you know, he was the first to declare an NDP victory last week, sending out a press release even before the government did on this affordability plan. Should he have waited if he's not happy today?
Well, first off, the GST provisions we support, and it was the GST provisions that we were saying, look, we forced the government yet again to do something good for Canadians, whether we're talking about dental care, pharmacare, anti-scab legislation, affordable housing investments, the red dress alert, and so on. I mean, the NDP in this Parliament has made the difference for so many people across the country. But the provisions of the rebate, the $250, the briefings talked about going to everybody, including seniors and students and people with disabilities. And then we get the bill on Friday morning, and it turns out that is not the case. So we immediately got up. I got up in Parliament an hour later to say this is unacceptable. Today we've had the Conservatives and the Bloc joining in as well. But the reality is it was dumb of the government to basically push aside seniors, students, and people with disabilities, and we want to see that rectified.
Mr. Gerretsen, you know, let's talk a bit more about that then, because here you have Canadians in seniors who are living on fixed incomes. Do they not deserve, and others who haven't worked in the last year, do they not deserve to get a portion of this help?
Well, let's remember that everybody will get the GST break, the first part of this. As it relates to the second part, the workers' rebate, many seniors, I think there's close to 1 million seniors that currently work, will receive this. There are many people, I know at least in my community, many people in the disabled community that work as well. They will receive this as well. But let's, not shy away from the fact that no government has done more for seniors in terms of bringing in new initiatives than we have in the last 9 years. When we took office, we had just left a Stephen Harper government that Pierre Poilievre was part of that told seniors, you have to work for 2 years longer before you can retire. We immediately reversed that. We increased OAS. We increased the GIS. We even our signature programs like dental care and pharmacare, seniors were on the top of the list. We made sure that seniors were the ones that were going to receive that care first before anybody else. So, I mean, there's been so many initiatives that this government has brought forward for seniors, and we'll continue to talk to seniors.
Are you worried about the political price, though? I hear what you're saying, that you, as a government, you feel that you've done already a lot already, but do you feel about that you might get some backlash for not including them in this program?
Well, I mean, people can always voice their concerns. I mean, we don't look at things sort of what's the political angle to this as much as what is good policy for Canadians, and we believe that the policy that we introduced is good, and it will benefit Canadians and it will benefit seniors as well. I mean, the big chunk of this is the GST, the holiday on the GST. Everybody is going to benefit from that, and people are going to save a lot of money. It's also going to benefit. It's also going to benefit a lot of businesses, small businesses. I can think of countless restaurants in my area that are typically really slow during January and February that are going to see increased traffic. And when we have an economy that is doing better for everybody, that's a benefit to the country as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Scheer, last week your leader would not say whether or not the Conservatives would actually support this GST holiday plus this $250 check. Can you say now whether or not your party will be supporting this?
Sure, but first let me just address a couple things. Nobody has done more to hurt seniors than this Liberal government. Seniors face the toughest challenge when it comes to the inflationary policies that Justin Trudeau has imposed on Canadians. When you're on a fixed income and prices start going through the roof because of Trudeau's inflation, it's very hard for seniors to make that up. Many of them have to re-enter into the workforce. Their pensions don't keep up with the inflation that Trudeau caused with his massive deficits and money printing. And the NDP support the quadrupling of the carbon tax. So when Mr. Julian talks about making life more affordable, it's not what his voting record shows when he votes time and time again to defend the Trudeau carbon tax, which does increase the cost of living very dramatically. So we have to see what's actually in the bill. They haven't tabled the bill in Parliament yet, and we've seen what they've done in the past. They've had to make corrections to their small business and middle class tax hike with the capital gains, where they had to come in and do almost a complete rewrite for whole components of it. So when they're actually ready to put before Parliament what they're going to do, we'll take a look at it. But I have to also point out that what they're talking about is a temporary 2-month trick right before they hike the carbon tax again. Right about just a few weeks after this temporary measure expires, they're going to jack up the carbon tax yet again. So I don't think Canadians are going to be fooled by saving a few cents on a bag of chips. If you look at the list of things they're doing this for, it's jigsaw puzzles for all ages, but board games just for children, and cheese curls and cheese puffs it's off of, and brittle pretzels. So we're going through some of these things, trying to figure out exactly what their logic was behind this. But costumes,
then I guess you can vote against
costumes 2 weeks after Halloween's over, and taking the GST off of Christmas trees after most families have already bought their trees and decorated them. So when they're ready to table it before Parliament, we'll take a look at it. But I should also point out, Justin Trudeau himself admitted that every dollar he spends like this increases inflation. So what we're concerned about is that all the temporary benefits that Canadians might see will just get sucked away with that giant shop vac of inflation that Justin Trudeau admitted all this deficit spending.
Mr. Scheer, let me just jump in before we lose time here, because I do want to pick up on what we're hearing from Mr. Scheer, Mr. Gerretsen, because we have heard from the business community. They think in broad strokes the GST portion will increase spending, but they also believe that increase in spending will essentially send a message to the Bank of Canada not to cut its bank rate so aggressively. If the issue here is affordability, why not let the bank continue its path as opposed to pursuing this type of, because it was just a few days ago where the Prime Minister did say it is inflationary to give out money like this.
Okay, so two things. I just want to correct the record on one thing. If you believe the argument that Mr. Scheer just put forward, that means that you believe the notion that Justin Trudeau has caused the inflation that we've seen.
Yes.
This is inflation that is global, so I guess he can control global inflation. This is global inflation. Well, we've had the lowest inflation.
Mr. Gerretsen, speak, please.
It's the lowest inflation. We've had the lowest inflation in the G7.
Let Mr. Gerretsen speak, please.
We've had the lowest inflation in the G7. We've seen the best outcome coming out of it with the softest landing of in the G7. The reality is that the world faced inflation following a war in Ukraine, following a pandemic.
But does this policy push pressure on inflation and also tell the Bank of Canada, wait, don't cut so aggressively right now?
When you invest in the people that need it the most and you give them the resources that they need to spend, you are not contributing to inflation the same way that you would if you're giving it to people that don't need it. That's just a reality. When you put money into the hands of the people that really need it so that they can spend it in the economy, it will keep our economy going and it will give them the supports and the resources that they need.
Mr. Julian, what do you say to that?
Well, first off, I mean, what we're talking about is the GST coming off of essentials. That's certainly what Jagmeet Singh and the NDP have been presenting, including home heating and cell phone the bills. I mean, the reality is that's an essential in today's environment. And of course, children's clothing. Some of those things are covered by the Liberal proposal. And certainly what this means is that Canadians will be a little less in debt over the Christmas season. Because of that, they will be spending. That's why we support it. It's not the NDP's approach. I mean, the NDP approach would be that it's permanent. And it's over all of the essentials, or it's taken off all of the essentials. But the flip-flop in Pierre Poilievre, I mean, in one minute he's saying axe taxes, and the other he's saying, okay, no, we don't know about how we're going to vote on this. And this is where I think the inconsistency of the Conservatives, changing their message every week and contradicting themselves constantly, undermines their own credibility. Now, as far as the check is concerned, though, the $250, it needs to go to people who are most desperate in terms of putting food on the table and keeping a roof over their head.
Any concerns about inflation,
seniors,
though?
people with disabilities.
Any concerns about inflation,
well, no,
though, Mr.
these are
Julian?
folks who are going into debt. They're scrimping and saving in order to survive. And the reality is, what this does is allow them to put food on the table. These are the kinds of measures that we want to see. That's why we want to see it as a permanent GST reduction. I mean, the GST was imposed on us by the Conservatives, and the reality is it's regressive taxation. It hurts those who are the lowest income. Now, what we have is an income tax system under Stephen Harper that gives $30 billion a year to the wealthiest, the billionaires, the wealthiest corporations. They can take it to their offshore tax havens, as the PBO has indicated, and that's something that really needs to be taken a look at so that we can have a more balanced income tax system. But the reality is, when it comes to regressive taxes like the GST imposed on us by the Conservatives, having that relief will make a difference. Having a $250 check this winter going to a senior, a person with a disability, or a student can make a difference too, and that's what the NDP is pushing for.
Okay, I'm quickly losing time, but I need to ask this very quickly, because in order to get this proposal passed, Part 1, Part 2, the deadlock over parliamentary privilege will have to be suspended for a time. How do you feel about that, Mr. Scheer?
Well, look, Justin Trudeau has to decide when he wants to comply with a lawful order of Parliament to produce documents in the $400 million scandal where Liberal insiders were funneling money into their own companies. He refuses to do that. That is his choice. But I just have to once again go back. Inflation is not a global phenomenon. If it's happening in other countries, it means that they did the same stupid things that the Trudeau government did. Justin Trudeau forced the Bank of Canada to print billions of dollars out of thin air, and that is what caused inflation. Nothing going on in Ukraine affects the Canadian housing market, affects the Canadian...
Okay, I'm jumping in about essentially suspending the parliamentary privilege. Mr. Julian, if you're willing to do it with this, why not work with the Liberals, get this impasse done, and get Parliament back to work?
We've said we're willing to do this because time is of the essence in making sure that people actually can take advantage of the GST being reduced, and hopefully also these checks going to people who are really in need across the country.
But in terms of getting Parliament back to work, are there not other priorities that have to happen?
We said the Conservatives should stop filibustering their own motion, but the Liberals have to provide the documents. This is something that Parliament directed the Liberal government to do, and they should respect that.
Okay, Mr. Gerretsen, last minute to you, last 40 seconds to you. What do you have to say about this?
Approximately 190 people have spoken to the motion that the Conservatives put forward, of which over 170 were Conservatives. I think they've talked enough about this particular issue, and it's time that we vote on their motion so that we can get back to doing the business of Canadians.
A Liberal MP just spoke to it today.
Okay, Mark Gerretsen, Andrew Scheer, Peter Julian, you three keep me on my toes. Thank you very much for this Monday.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.